this proof, I want to demonstrate what I call the doing whatever you can legally strategy. By the time we have all 20 of our rules, doing whatever you legally can isn't always a very efficient way to go about things. There's just too many legal options. But at least in the beginning, when our proofs are fairly limited, because we only have, for example, 4 rules this week or 11 rules next week, doing whatever you legally can actually help get you some practice with the rules, seeing these patterns, and developing more effective strategies. And even after we get all 20 rules, doing whatever you legally can is always the fallback strategy. When you get stuck, do what you legally can, generate a new line or 3, and sometimes that new information is all you need to be able to tell where the proof does need to go so that you can successfully complete it. Now, when I talk about doing what we legally can, the first step is in just taking a look at what you have in your proof so far. So far we only have premises, but taking a look and just looking for matching patterns, specifically matching patterns that match our rules. And right now, we just have these 4 rules. You should always have your rules cheat sheet with you when you're doing proofs anyway, but certainly in the beginning, have those 4 rule patterns ready so that you are reminded of what rule patterns to look for. And then you can just start looking for matching pieces, really. For example, notice that the T is repeated in the second and third premises, and importantly, they're repeated in the hypothetical syllogism or HS pattern. That is to say, the shared component is the consequent of one of the horseshoe sentences, and it's the antecedent of the other horseshoe sentence. Now, I also recommend taking notes with your proofs. In other words, just keeping track of what you're seeing. So maybe we've got 2 and 3 HS. What other matching pieces or patterns do we have? Well, here's another one. This A matches up with the left-hand disjunct of line 1. Now, admittedly and importantly, it's the negation of the left-hand disjunct. But that's actually great because that's the DS pattern. Whenever we have a disjunction and the negation of really either the left or the right-hand disjunct, then we're allowed to derive the remaining disjunct. So again, in terms of just keeping track of some possible options, maybe we've got 1 and 4 DS. And then we've got one more matching pattern, but it's going to be a little bit of a dead end, at least for right now. Got a repetition here of the B's. First of all, they're not a perfect match. It's a B and then a negated B. And also, they don't appear in sentences that are going to match any of our patterns. With negation, it's possible that we can use modus tollens, but then we really need the consequent negated on a line by itself, not as the tail end of a disjunction. Now, for some of you, you're already seeing where this proof is going to go, and that's actually a demonstration of how doing whatever you legally can generate the right proof strategy, right? You're anticipating, in other words, that we'll use DS and then be able to use modus tollens. But for now, it's a little bit of a dead end. And so what other patterns are apparent at this point? Well, there's just one more, and it has to do where the conclusion might come from. Now, we want tilde R, and what we have in line 2 is an R as an antecedent of a conditional. Now, there's nothing that we can do right now to get the conclusion, but again, it's something that's worth noticing, because if we were able to derive the negation of this consequent here, then we could use modus tollens to get the negation of the antecedent. And so if that tells us basically all of our options at this point, well, then we just have the 2 that we can pursue. Doesn't really matter which one we start with because we have the ingredients for everything that we need here, but might as well just go in the order that we did see them. So first off, premises 2 and 3 match the hypothetical syllogism pattern. One way to think about what HS allows us to do is that it allows us to get rid of the shared sentence component. That is to say, we're allowed to derive R horseshoe B, getting rid of that shared T. Next line, well, we were thinking we do DS on lines 1 and 4. And here, we're deriving from the negation of one of the disjuncts. We're deriving the remaining disjunct. Don't be fooled here or misled by this negation. The rule says that we derive the remaining disjunct as is. We don't change it. We don't remove a tilde. We don't add a tilde. We don't do anything except just copy it over. And that's why this tilde stays put. We're just taking this disjunct and deriving it on a new line by itself. Now at this point, we've exhausted what we saw before, But again, we had a couple of dead-end leads before, and we've got more ingredients now. In particular, one of the things that we had thought about was trying to pair up these two B's. But in order to use modus tollens, we needed not B on a line by itself, not attached to a disjunction. Well, we've got that not B here on a line by itself. So now we can use modus tollens on lines 3 and 6, and modus tollens allows us to derive the negation, the antecedent. So that's going to be tilde t. So now we've got a new line, a new ingredient, and it was something that we anticipated or hoped that we would be able to have. That is to say, our conclusion is the negation of the antecedent of the conditional at line 2. However, to derive tilde r from line 2, we needed the negation of the consequent. Well, look, that's what we've got now at line 7. So we derive tilde r from 2 and 7, again using modus tollens. And now that we've desired our desired conclusion, we're done with the proof. And just to summarize really quickly, the do anything legally that you can strategy, it does always work. It's just that when you have 20 rules, it's not always very efficient. So if you do get stuck in a proof, it's a good fallback strategy because it generates some more ingredients, and assessing those new ingredients can sometimes give you more direction to go in the proof. And then in the beginning, when we only have 4 rules this week or 11 rules next week, doing whatever you can legally will usually generate enough lines that you are able to then derive the conclusion.